a world where governments can violate the truth, violate the rule of law with impunity, and also telling the truth has become a crime, and that these governments, how can we act, please?
Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you.
Tall order there. So I would say that the legal actions are left to the legal team of Julian Assange, right? For people who don't know, there are a number of potential appeals. So there's an Anglo-American extradition treaty, and under that extradition treaty, the 2003 extradition treaty, the obligation is on the person who's being sought to explain why they shouldn't be extradited. So I don't know if people know this, there's a presumption in favor of extradition. So the Americans have to say, we want this person, and then all they have to do is make clear that this is the right person, that there isn't somebody else with the same name, and that the charges that they're charging them for would be crimes in Britain. Then it's down to you to say why you shouldn't be sent. In Julian Assange's case, they raised a number of arguments why he shouldn't be sent. The judge ignored or dismissed all of those arguments except for one of them, that there's a very high risk of suicide if he were to be extradited, due to both his own history with mental illness and the fact that he's on the autism spectrum, but also the condition that he would be held in the United States. That was then reversed by the High Court when the US government appealed their loss. The Supreme Court has refused to hear an appeal from Julian Assange's defense team, and now Priti Patel will be considering, as Home Secretary, will be, if you like, the last person to consider the case before deciding whether or not to grant extradition. However, there's still appeals potentially to the European Court of Human Rights. And there's also a potential other set of appeals, known as the Cross Appeal, which is on all the grounds they originally lost on. We remember when I said they presented many defense arguments against extradition, and they only won on one of them. So the things that they lost on, which they may still appeal to the High Court, is things like this is a politically motivated prosecution. The prosecution itself is politically motivated. The charges are political offenses, espionage, which are exempt under the treaty, the extradition treaty. Extradition would violate freedom of speech and freedom of the press guaranteed in the European Convention of Human Rights, which Britain is still obviously a signatory to and still applies in UK law. So on the legal side, that's where the key legal arguments are. But as Stella Morris, Julian's wife, has pointed out, that she believes the battle will be fought in the political sphere much more than the legal sphere. And that is where it comes down to everyday people organizing and putting pressures on their members of parliament. Contrary to popular myth, MPs do listen when they have sufficient number of people writing to them on a single issue, regardless of the issue. If it's a few people, you can afford to dismiss it. When you have 50, 150, 200, given the fact that MPs get elected with a few thousand votes, what is it, 10,000 plus votes, I guarantee you, especially based on conversations I've had with members of parliament, they do listen. So if enough pressure is placed on politicians, politicians may end up, and I mean both Labour and Tory, and it's a Tory-dominated government, so it makes sense if your MP is a Tory MP, you put pressure them, then they can then pressure the Prime Minister, whether it's Boris Johnson or whoever it happens to be. If enough pressure is brought to bear, then pressure may be placed on the Americans to drop their extradition request. So whether or not Julian Assange is extradited is a legal question, but it's also a political decision as well. So I think the majority of scope for people to act is in the political sphere rather than in the legal sphere.
Thank you.